Good morning, everyone, and thank you for gathering this morning. Colleagues have just come from an Open Doors event up in the Long Gallery. I think it's important, first time that Open Doors have been in this building for their World Watch List report in the last decade. It's normally something we talk about in Westminster, but freedom of religion, religious belief is very important to many in Northern Ireland, so I encourage you to look at this report and the stark experience people face throughout the world because of their faith and how we consider it. Today as well is a busy day. We have a renewed focus on the Human Trafficking and Exploitation Act that was first passed in Northern Ireland and led the way in the United Kingdom on how we protect vulnerable women and girls throughout our society. Lord Morrow will be here this morning to engage in that issue as a trailblazer in legislative terms and what steps can now be taken about some of the online content that is being used to exploit women throughout our society. In Westminster on Wednesday, legacy is back on the agenda. The government are going to bring forward their remedial order. We know that the Supreme Court have yet to determine whether there is an incompatibility with human rights law. So just as it was outlined pre-Christmas, we will maintain our position that this is premature and that the government, even though they abandoned their appeal, an appeal is still before the Supreme Court, having been sustained by the Northern Ireland Veterans Movement Group, and we think that that should be determined. And then over the weekend you will have learned that on Friday morning I wrote to John Burrows. I wrote to John on the basis of exploring with him his interest in wider cooperation within the Unionist community. We all know the strong feeling amongst those Unionists throughout Northern Ireland who believe there should be greater cooperation. Having written on Friday morning, I informed members of my own party that I had done so on Saturday morning, and many of you have been interested in that issue to date. I've seen some speculation, one way or t'other. I look forward to the engagement that I trust will follow, setting aside personal interest and focusing on Northern Ireland and Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom.
It's fair to say that, Gavin, the statement that UDP put out in response to that wasn't maybe what you might have hoped for, and in fact there was one line in it they talked about some of these conversations around unionist unity tend to be about self-interest rather than genuine cooperation. That felt like a bit.
In one way or another, I've been engaged in discussions around cooperation for almost the entire time I've been in elected politics. You will know about some of the discussions that took place 10 years ago in my first election as a Member of Parliament, but then and since, in support of other party leaders, I have found that the desire of the Unionist people in Northern Ireland has fallen, not because of principle, not because of policy positions, but because of personal discord. I don't have any of that. I hope John doesn't have any of that. I hope anyone who believes in Northern Ireland's place within the Union can set aside issues of the past for which they're not responsible and engage in this quest productively and positively. Because it's not about me or the DUP, it's not about any leader or their party, it's about our place in this country and how we can maximise the best outcome for the people we represent.
Does that almost make it sound as if the problem that there has been with achieving unionist unity up until now has been almost a personality issue with the leaders, and that you're taking the opportunity now that there has been a change of leadership to explore the issue?
I've taken the opportunity to explore this every time there's been a change of leader. I've been involved in discussions personally, I've been involved in discussions in support of others, and what you find are issues of the past are dragged into those discussions. I'm interested in focusing on the future and what can be delivered for Northern Ireland and our place within the United Kingdom.
When you talk about issues in the past, Gavin, are you talking about the likes of the Brexit negotiations, that sort of thing? I'm just not clear what they may be.
Well, very often parties are pitted against one another. Very often there have been electoral battles, as you know, in constituencies or across the province over decades, and some find it difficult to move beyond those. There's now the potential for a discussion with somebody who is newly in post, who is not confined by or bound to those experiences. So I'll explore those discussions. The opportunity is there, and I think it's one worth pursuing.
Gavin, can I get your comments on international affairs in particular the threat from Donald Trump over tariffs regarding Greenland, what actually could mean for us here?
So we've been in a position where there have been the threat of, the promise of tariff differentials before. I think it's widely recognised that it doesn't work for Northern Ireland, it doesn't work for the United Kingdom, and you'll hear many countries throughout Europe suggesting that this is the wrong way to go. I think everyone can accept that NATO needs to work. NATO as an alliance has been successful over the last 70 years, 80 years since its inception. We rely on the security guarantees. And so I don't think we have any clarity on what the President of the United States ultimately wants to achieve, or whether he's achieving it already by just having a greater focus on military presence within Greenland. But we're going to have to go through a cycle of drama around all of this, and I trust, just as was the case in the past, the threat and potential damage that would be brought through tariff differentials will not be reached.
Can I just follow up on that, Gavin? So, in terms of the actual threat that's coming from Donald Trump, what's your position on that as a party? And secondly, do you agree with what appears to be something of a softly approach by the Prime Minister?
I think he's been very clear today that what is proposed is wrong. I don't see any benefit in threatening allies on tariff basis because of an aspiration that the President of the United States has. But I mean, look, very clearly, it is uncontroversial to say that you cannot have a NATO member, a member of the alliance, threaten another NATO member with military action. And of course, I don't believe that will ever come to pass either. But the President of the United States clearly has a quest. He is engaging with our nation and others throughout that alliance. And I think in a number of months, if not less, you'll be asking the question, what was all that about?
Gavin, just to go back to Unionist cooperation, what needs to happen in those talks to make those successful?
Well, I want to see the discussions take place. As you know, I have been engaged with discussions previously, and most recently with Jim Allister and with Mike Nesbitt, at times with others who've sought to facilitate those discussions. So we will go with an open mind, but a sincere desire to respond to the needs and the quest of the wider Unionist population who want to see leaders of political parties set aside party interest and put forward national interest.
Can I also ask just some of the views towards Carla Lockhart? What was your thoughts on that again?
Yeah, so I issued some lines of support, and I spoke with Carla last Thursday. I think it's just another example of how we have people in Northern Ireland who very often will talk strongly about the toxic nature of our discourse, and very often profoundly focus on how unacceptable it is, but turn a blind eye when it's towards somebody they disagree with. That's wrong. But they snigger when they see it about somebody that they have an issue with. That's wrong too. And all too often, my colleagues and I are the focus of that malign influence on social media. And it's got to stop. And it's not good enough to talk about it loftily in one respect, but turn a blind eye when it's focused on your opponents. There's a greater desire from all of us to engage in a better way. And there's a challenge in that too. And a challenge for those who complain one day and then retweet what they think is funny or politically expedient the next. So I think it's a shame that it has happened. It's not a new experience for Carla. In fact, she's only speaking about it on this occasion because it was highlighted for her by an influencer that she engages with and we as a party have engaged with on agricultural issues. So perturbed were they by the level of vitriol that she puts up with every day. They took action and she's responding to it, but it needs to stop.
Gavin,
Okay,
there
folks?
has been talk, obviously, of a need for realignment within unionism. Do you believe these negotiations will lead to that, and are we likely to see that before the next elections?
I think we need to have a discussion about it. We need to engage in this faithfully and purposefully. I can't predetermine that today, nor would it be appropriate for me to do so, but I want to, and I think there's a desire and a need to engage in those discussions. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.